What is going on, bros and broettes? Got a cool video for you. So you guys are always interested in details, right? And it's that time of year. We're getting into late summer. We're flipping and punch. You see the grin on my face? So we're flipping and punching really come into play. The grass all is grown up. It just set up. Those fish are moving back into the grass from the deeps, getting in that thick stuff, and it's a perfect time for a frog and then the big F word, flipping. So what we're gonna do is, I'm pretty good at flipping. It's my bread and butter. It's something I've always done in Florida. When I got to Alabama, it was one of the first things I had success with here on Guntersville. And I'm gonna take you and we're gonna dive into the details of some of the tricks and techniques of flipping and punching through some of this heavy cover. I'm gonna give you the rigs, the setups, what baits, what style of baits to pick in certain situations, as long as how to rig it up and how to actually do it. What are some of the tricks of actually presenting the bait? Where do you put the bait? Where do you flip the bait? What do you target? All those things. I'm gonna try to pack it in and just give you those exact details instead of, all the wishy-washy, BS that you gotta wade through a lot of times when it comes to YouTube. So hit that like and subscribe button. Let's go put on the bake sticks and see if we can't dob a few in the boat. Get in here. How about it, boys? Oh, dude, that's a 5-pounder. And that's why you flip mats, boys. That right there is exactly why you flip the mats. So that one was interesting. That came on the BB Cricket, just a little kind of craw bait. And that's one of the first things you have to figure out is kind of, do they want something like a little dangle or do they want something big? God, they're so mean, dude. Back down into the mats you go. He just bit my finger, dude. Punching. Let's talk setups really quick. So the first setup's kind of like my most versatile setup. This is a 7.6 heavy, and that's the key to all these rods. 7.6 heavy XD3 Pro Halo. I got 80-pound braid on there. This is an old Corrado 200E. So basically, this rod, this is going to be my kind of 1 1/4, 1.25 down. So this is the same rod that I would put 20-pound fluorocarbon on, spool it up with like a 1/2 ounce jig, a 3/4 ounce jig, maybe a 3/8 ounce tungsten weight and a stick bait like an ace or something, and pitch it around strands or pitch it into holes. This is really my most versatile rod. It's also kind of like my lightest. It's perfect for that 1.25. When I go up to a 1.5, it gets a little too heavy for this rod. Has an awesome action on it, has a nice little tip to it, but a lot of backbone. The key with all these rods is they're heavies, so they're not overpowering. I'm not going to rip the hook out of the fish. The whole deal is I want to feel the bite. I want the rod to load up well, and if I'm not able to get that fish out, that's fine. I have some methodologies to do that. You can point and pull the fish out, or you can actually just go get them. My heavier setups is actually a rod that's not made anymore. This is Halo TI X, 711 heavy. Once again, got the greeny meanie on there, 80-pound braid. That's Daiwa Samurai braid. This rod is a 711. It's super stout, a little bit heavier. I can flip up to like a 2 ounce on this thing. I'll use it mainly for a 2 ounce, a 1.75, and a 1.5 ounce. 1.5 is really my go-to, and then I might bump up to a 1.75. This is not a rod that I'll use for lighter stuff. I might flip like an ounce with it, but I'm not going to be flipping like a 1/2 ounce, things like that. It's a much taller rod, 711. It's longer than that 7.6. It just gives me a little more leverage to do some of that doodle dicking, that kind of lifting and pumping the bait. It also loads up a lot better when these fish, especially as the water cools in fall, a lot of times these fish will hold on to the bait under the mat, and this is a very kind of like soft playable tip in like that first 6-7 inches, and I can really kind of just feel them holding and then just reel down and kind of do a sweeping like hook set, and it really sets up and hooks them really well without actually dropping the weight back to them, because like we've talked about, when they feel that weight sometimes and they're in a funky mood, they'll just drop the bait. ate it before it even got under. Man, I was wondering what happened to my bait, and that's what happens sometimes, dude. They'll just freaking stop that bait. You'd be like, man, I thought I got under. And no, they ate it before it even got down. They're such fast critters, dude. That right there is exactly what your deck should look like after you do a day of this. Oh, that's salad, boy. When I'm looking at these mats, it's just like any kind of fishing. You're looking for points, you're looking for grass junctures, so you have like chopped grass to right there, the hydrilla starts coming up and gets canopied, milfoil mixes. The biggest thing, and I don't care whether you're punching mats or you're just kind of flipping, it all relates to holes. And whether that's a hole like that hole in the grass in front of us, or that's a hole like under the mat where there's a canopy, so there's an open hole or an open area, that's what I'm targeting. If I'm flipping a 1/2 ounce or if I'm flipping a 2 ounce, you know, to try to punch on through. And all I'm trying to do is deliver that bait into that area, get it punched through or pitch it to that hole, and then getting it down to the bottom. And then I might do some lifts just like this. The other thing that I'll do too is I like to get it down and then I'll dangle it. Just dangle dick in. So I'll just kind of lift my rod tip. You got to be a little careful with hook sets because a lot of times when they bite like this, if you drop back to them, they drop the bait. So you almost have to have it just slightly up so that you can reel down and engage and go ahead and hit them. But the majority of your bites when it comes to flipping, for as much as it's a picking apart, small kind of area fishing style, a lot of your bites are going to be on the reaction. They're going to be when that bait drops through initially. And it's either going to be, you're going to kind of reel down and you're going to feel dead weight, or you're going to feel like a hold that's not like grass. Or as it goes down, these are the best bites, is you pitch it in there and your whole rod and the bait just go doink. And it is freaking awesome. Like, actually, ooh, that felt funky. I must have hit a piece of grass. But what you want to do when that happens is reel down. And I think one mistake a lot of guys make is they hit the fish too hard. I hit them pretty hard, but it's more about being quick, I think. You got to remember, you're using braid, you're using that snelled knot right there on the hook, so it kicks the hook up. Between the braid and the stiffer rod, you really don't need much to kick that hook through. So you don't have to smoke them. You just got to reel down and just kind of put that hard sweep, that quick sweep to kick that hook out and engage the braid. Because my goal whenever I set the hook is one of two things: either pop that fish out initially or get them pinned so that I can go and get them. Because usually, knock on wood, you know, they stay on when you end up pinning them. Baits, baits, baits. Everybody wants to know the secret bait. There really isn't one. There's a few that are like naughty, but I always bring a lot of baits when I'm doing this. When flipping season is in like full swing, I have way too much stuff, and it's probably the Florida guy in me, but I also have a system. It's a pretty straightforward system, so you can kind of, you know, call out some of this stuff. When it comes down to it, these fish, when they're in this thick cover, they want a bait that does one of two things. They want it to go doo-doo-doo, or they want it to go foop. That makes perfect sense, right? So the way to kind of explain it is either they want something, the BB Cricket is one that I use as an example all the time, a super streamlined bait with not much like kicking action, something that basically does nothing. It can be a crawbait, but some crawbaits have flappers on them. Another example, like Missile makes their D-bomb. It's a straight kind of like paddle kind of deal. It doesn't really kick, it just kind of glides. Or the other thing is something that has more of like a kicking, like a appendage. Something maybe like a burner craw is a good example, a rage craw, something that has these kicker style legs that displace water and then also in turn kind of slow the bait down. The third sort of option, and it sort of relates to the D-bomb, is something that glides. I always like these big bite baits. These guys, I think it's called the Big Mama or the Yo Mama. It's just a large paddle. It has a little bit of kind of waving action, but the biggest key with these beaver style baits is they glide down. And that's really what you have to figure out when you're on the water, and that's what I'm figuring out today. Thus far, for the most part, they want a do nothing action. The biggest fish that I caught's on a BB cricket, so I'm using things that are sort of streamlined with appendages, but those appendages shake and vibrate. They don't actually kick. I flipped a burner craw quite a bit, and then I flipped sort of like an in-between bait. It's a gambler stinger. It's kind of like a beaver style bait, but at the same time, it has a little bit of a ridged kicking kind of tail on it, just like that. So it's sort of an in-between. This one glides just as much as it kicks, but you really have to figure it out. I was talking to Scott Martin when we actually shot a TV show out here flipping some mats, and he's convinced of it too. These fish either react to something that's kind of waving to them, creating all this displacement, or it has to do with slowing the fall of that bait as it falls down, or they want something that does absolutely nothing. And that's really one of the primary things you need to figure out. You can pick your favorite bait, whatever it is, a craw style bait, a creature style bait, a beaver style bait, but you really have to figure out, do they want that bait to glide on through, to slide on through the mat, or do they want it to kick some more? The other thing that you're going to find too is those baits that have kind of less appendages or less kicking style appendages tend to go through the mats a little bit better. So you have to sort of balance the compactness and the fluidity of the bait, the way it goes through the cover, against kind of having some of those kicking appendages, because sometimes you actually have to bump up your weight. So the one thing we haven't talked about is these guys, and that's punch skirts. This is actually a Gambler KO punch skirt. It's a quick change. You can see it's got like a little wider grommet. So when do you implement a punch skirt? I don't have a good answer. I have two general philosophies. If there's a lot of brim around, that flaring kind of look looks a lot like a brim, that wider body. And then the other thing, for some reason, it seems to work really well on river systems. We're on Guntersville. It's an impounded TVA, Tennessee River kind of lake. So it works good out here. However, it seems like they either really want a punch skirt when they want it, or dude, they won't touch your bait. So you got to kind of be careful, try it out, sample it. And that's why I like this quick change skirt, because what I can actually do is, I got one rigged up. It actually slides right over the hook shank. So I can take my soft plastic off, slide that KO punch skirt on there, get a punch skirt on, try it out, make some drops, see if I get bit, and then get rid of it if I don't, or stick with it. The other thing that I do is, you can see this one's out of the package. It's pretty bulky. So what ends up happening with a punch skirt is it actually inhibits you from getting through the mat a little bit. So either you have to up your weight, or you got to kind of pendulum it in the air and bomb it on down. Both those things I don't like to do. So what I actually do, this one's pretty trimmed. I'm gonna give it a little bit more. I don't need a huge punch skirt. I just want it to flare a little bit. So I trim these jokers way down, so they're just like a little bit of a complement to the bait. I still get some of that flaring, but I almost make them look like a little finesse jig, just a little bit of a puff. It allows that bait to still get through the mat pretty clean. The colors I like to use, I usually try to like complement the bait. In this case, it's got a little green pumpkin. It actually kind of matches a little bit. There's a little lighter kind of, it's a I don't know, like a magic craw kind of highlight with a little bit of glitter. Oftentimes what I'll do, some of the best colors for flipping, I don't care what lake you are fishing, is green pumpkin and black and blue. So I'll take like a green pumpkin soft plastic and use like a black and blue skirt, or vice versa. Obviously there's different variations, out here in Guntersville, like that green pumpkin swirl works really well. There's a color called Friendly Fire. I probably have one right here. It's kind of like a June bug look to it. But a lot of times I can sort of mimic some of those colors, take like a little green pumpkin and then take like a little bit of a purplish skirt and put it on there. I just use it to kind of complement things. It bulks up the bait. It looks a little bit like the brim. And like I said, you got to kind of get a feel for it, because the fish are either going to bite it or they're not. If you're around brim and you're on the river system, it's definitely worth a try. In some other situations, it can be a little inhibitive. The other kind of cool thing that we can do is, we talked about in the setups, I have that 7/6 for some open water fishing. You can actually make your own sort of weedless jig. We did it on Okeechobee a lot when the jig bite was really good. We flipped that double weed guard jig, and it would get hung when you really put it in the super duper thick stuff, and we couldn't fish it very clean. So what we ended up doing is taking like a 3/4 ounce, a 1/2 ounce, maybe even sometimes a 1 ounce, and we take that bullet weight, and then you take a punch skirt instead of using that jig. So you'd have that that snelled hook. You could put whatever plastic on you wanted to, pitch it way back in the reeds and fish it a lot cleaner, but still have that flaring kind of jig presentation. So it's a little kind of sneaky trick you can do. It's also real sneaky using it with like a stick bait. You take like a little skirt that you trim way down, put a 3/8 ounce weight, 1/2 ounce weight, and a stick bait. A buddy of mine on Kissimmee taught me that, and you pitch it around in those grass strands, the Kissimmee grass, pads, like little corners and stuff. Sneaky little bait, and then you can shake it, and that flare of that skirt really looks cool.
That's another good one, dude. Bro, he walked away with it. Like, I didn't even know he was there for a minute. Dude, it's been all about the cricket. Like, he smoked that BB cricket. They wanted that non-active kind of look to the bait. That's freaking awesome. I love doing this, dude. We're gonna wrap this up in the best way possible, putting another bait on because we freaking caught another bass and just absolutely tore up my cricket. Yeah, a couple little wrap-up tips, and then we're gonna close this thing out. Make sure you're snelling. If you're doing this punching style thing, that snell kicks that hook up just like that, and it just makes it a lot easier to hook up with these fish. Especially some of these fish have been a little weird. If they're doing that weird swipey kind of bite, or they're running and you can't catch up with them like with the reel, it allows you to have a little bit of an insurance policy. You don't need to have them like super reeled down on to set the hook. The other thing is, you can use a wide range of tungsten. Check out Blackout Tungsten. They make like a 1 1/4 that I like to use. For some reason it just gets through a little bit better when I'm using those little like a slightly lighter presentation, a 1 ounce, 1 1/4, things along those lines when I'm punching. Hogtech tungsten is what I normally use. Straight shank hook when you're doing this snell deal, and it's just a Texas rig just like that. And then the other thing I do is I always run just double bobber stoppers. I find that when you're fishing this heavy cover, you tend to rub off a bobber stopper, and especially if you're in a tournament situation, the last thing you want to be doing is retying, going through all that shenanigans. So it just makes you a little more fluid. But this is one of my favorite ways to fish. I catch giants, I catch numbers, especially like now going through like the end of the year, fall and that, as that grass dies. Just look for vegetation that's matted up, or you can fish the holes around it. There really isn't a right or a wrong way to do this. I love the mats, but you can fish the edges, you can fish the holes, anywhere there's a gap. You have all this grass that's grown up over the summer. When you find that gap, it's something different, and that's what those fish gravitate to. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I'll put links to all the punching, flipping shenanigans that you need down in the description box if you want to get out there and give it a try. Hit that like and subscribe button for me. I'm going to go dive on a few and head on home and go see Bog. Later, boys.